Hello creatives, I'm Joanna Penn from thecreativepenn.com, and today I'm talking about how many words should your book be, which is a surprisingly common question, and it will depend on what you're writing, and we'll cover fiction and non-fiction. So let's start out with some of the, the smallest things. So flash fiction, poetry, those things are normally quite small. Under flash fiction, for example, is under 1,500 words, and if you search for flash fiction, you'll find some really interesting things there. 1,500 words is actually interesting from a non-fiction point of view, as it is the level of most of my blog posts, so kind of short form non-fiction as well. So then we move up to short stories, which are usually between 5,000 to 7,500 words, or they can be longer, let's say 10,000 words, but that will often depend on the market you're trying to sell them into. So I have a number of short stories that have been commissioned in my book, 1,000 Fiendish Angels, and they were all commissioned at around 5,000 words each. And if you have a look at some of the short fiction story markets, and I have interviews on the channel with Douglas Smith and also with Alan Baxter, so you can see what sort of length and what sort of markets are looking for short stories. But yes, between sort of 5,000, 7,500, but it will depend on the market. Then with fiction, we're talking about novellas, and with non-fiction, we're talking about short books. And these are usually between around 15 to 17,000 words and all the way up to sort of 40,000 words. And I actually think this is a really good length. And it's a length I do quite a bit. So I have novellas. So here's one example, and I have a number of novellas which are around 25 to 30,000 words. You can see they still a good size, and you'll actually see this size in a lot of classic literature. If you find books by people like George Orwell in print, they're often pretty short. Hemingway, stuff like that. So short fiction and short non-fiction is absolutely valid. So the same length is what I do for many of my non-fiction books. So this is the Successful Author Mindset. Again, it's fine, it's completely right for a book, and if you compare it for the two, the spines are almost exactly the same. So this is what a sort of 25 to 30,000 word book it looks like, feels like, and that's absolutely valid. And what's great with the non-fiction in particular is that this means there's no fluff. One of the biggest things that people talk about with non-fiction is that they are too padded, and often, again, that comes down to traditional publishing contracts, which often specify a book has to be a certain length. So if I tried to make the Successful Author Mindset 60,000 words or 70,000 words, then that is going to be padded. It really is. So for me, that was a really good length. The other thing with fiction, with novellas, is that it's much easier to write a story that is sort of 25 to 30,000 words. You can hold that in your head. It can be really fast-paced, which mine are, and pretty much you can cover more than a short story, but obviously you don't have to produce a novel. Now, of course, the pricing for all these different points is important, and my novellas are a lot cheaper than my full-length books. Well, I say a lot cheaper. They're usually $2.99, $2.99, whereas my full-length fiction is $4.99, and for my non-fiction, I'm also pricing the shorter books between $2.99 and $4.99, and then the longer ones at sort of $6 to $8.99. So those are some things to consider at the novella and short non-fiction books, which are around 25 to 30,000. So then we are moving up to a full-length book size, and it's going to really depend on your genre. So I write in thrillers, which usually are around between 60 and 100,000 words. So for example, Stone of Fire is around 72,000, and Desecration is around 65,000-ish. So basically they are full-length books that satisfy the reader of full-length books, but they are not as big as many traditionally published books. Now, if you're writing in fantasy genre particularly, then you'd be looking at least double that size size. So many fantasy authors are writing in the sort of 100 to 150,000 or even more, 200,000 or even bigger. If you pick up a George R.R. Martin or a Tolkien, you're going to see the kind of chunky books. But what's happening with the digital world, of course, is people are starting to make those smaller, creating more of a series type of effects and selling multiple smaller books. And urban fantasy, other genres within the fantasy area are often shorter than those sort of epic fantasy. So be very clear on your genre. Romance, for example, 50,000 words is a full-length romance, and that's actually, I quite like that length. I think 50,000 you can absolutely cover a story and in a great way, but it doesn't go on for long and you don't have to pad it all out, and you can write more quickly, so that's good. Now with non-fiction, some of my chunkier books, so How to Market a Book is also 70,000, so it's pretty big book, and that for me, I definitely could have split this into smaller packages as such, but it is a chunky book for a reason, because book marketing is a big topic, and this really does represent the sort of my body of knowledge on this topic. So I really like that it is that much value for a reader. So that's something to consider. So non-fiction, 70,000 words would be a kind of normal non-fiction, but often non-fiction books are shorter. So hopefully that will give you some idea. But the other thing is to really consider your genre. So biography, for example, there are some really chunky biographies. If you think about Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson, that's a really massive one. So again, revisit your genre. What is the length that people are enjoying? What is the price that you can put on that book? And what do you like reading? Do you like reading the massive books? My husband, for example, is a fantasy reader and listener and really likes massive books and thinks mine are way too short. Whereas for thriller readers, we want fast pace, and that means not going on forever. So I hope that gives you some ideas, and if you want more tips on the business and craft of writing, then subscribe to the channel, and happy writing. I'll see you next time.